One thing that I would always say with my clients, because I'm a slogan type person, if I can get you to remember something.
Wait. We're going to put this on the screen, y'all. Tell me, Brittney.
Drugs and alcohol aren't the problem. They're a solution to a problem much deeper.
Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, the podcast with Dr. Susan Crockett. You are listening to episode number 59, Self-Care, Creating a Life You Don't Need to Escape From. An interview with licensed clinical social worker and therapist Brittney Tolar, LCSW. She specializes in trauma survivors, codependency, and substance use.
Welcome to Becoming Virtuosa, the podcast that encourages you to become your best virtuosa self. Each week, Dr. Susan Crockett goes where the scalpel can't reach, exploring conversations about how to be, heal, love, give, grow, pray, and attune. For the first time ever, she's bringing the personal one-on-one teaching that she shares with individual patients to you on this broader platform. A weekly source of inspiration and encouragement designed to empower you. By evolving ourselves as individuals, we influence and transform the world around us. Please help me welcome board-certified OB-GYN specializing in minimally invasive GYN surgery, internationally in the top 1% of all GYN robotic surgeons, a certified life coach, and U.S. News top doctor, your host, Susan A. Crockett, MD.
I have a really fun guest today. This is Brittney Tolar. She is a licensed clinical social worker. And Brittney, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and then I'm going to tell our audience about how we met.
Hi, my name is Brittney Lollis Tolar. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working in the field of mental health for about 12 years now. I started in addiction treatment. I currently own my own private practice in Austin. Super cool. Well, I'm mostly telehealth in the state of Texas, so I can see people all over the state of Texas. And the name of my private practice is Breathe, Listen, Transition.
Breathe,
Listen,
transition.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. I like that a lot. So I actually met you through a very special person. Mm-hmm. Nick, your husband,
yes,
is actually, y'all, he's super important to me. We're going to give y'all a behind the scenes tour coming up. We're getting ready to film that episode. Nick is the person who helped build out my studio. Yes, he's amazing. And he refinished the furniture. He put the legs on the chair you're sitting on. He built this pegboard. And yeah, I'm indebted to him. He's quite amazing. And so Nick and I were talking about the show. It was actually about 2 years ago as he was, helping me do this. And he said, you know who would be a good person to have on the show? He's like, my wife, she'd be amazing. And so now you're finally here. I'm so excited.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've got a great background story about how you came to meet Nick and how you became a social worker and specifically how you got into addiction medicine. And I'm excited for my audience to have a show about addiction, by the way. And when I say addiction, I don't mean necessarily drugs and alcohol and all that, but it's anything that we use to buffer, distract us from our lives. So it can be those things, but it could be porn or television or Facebook, social media, whatever it is that is causing you to not engage fully in your life and your presence. Did I say that right? Is that what you would say?
That's beautiful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us your story. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I graduated with my undergrad degree, couldn't find a job as usual. And so I was working at Olive Garden.
Olive Garden.
all of my stories start. Well, I was working at Olive Garden. And so my mother, who's also in the counseling field, was working with active duty military and decided to go get her certification in addiction treatment. The supervision hours didn't work for her work schedule. So she told me or asked me if I would be interested in it. And so I knew that I wanted to be a therapist. I knew I was working toward that. And I knew addiction was part of mental health. And so I got my supervision. That encouraged me to go back to school to get my master's in social work. And so after graduating, I couldn't find a job that really filled my heart. And so I networked as we're told to do. And so I went on Facebook and I reached out.
You were just scrolling though.
Oh yeah, I was just scrolling. And so I reached out to a lady that I had met on a cruise like the year before.
A whole year before?
Just the year before. And I was like, hi, Jen. I don't know if you remember me from the cruise last year. here.
That's pretty bold.
But I need a job. When you're desperate after grad school, you'll call anybody. And so Jen said, I don't have anything open, but I'm in Texas, right? And at the time I was living in Georgia. And so I said, oh, that's fine. Never been to Texas, but I need a job. So I sent her my resume, and then I went to church that Sunday, went to my Sunday school group, and I was like, y'all, I need a job. Y'all help me pray for this. And Monday, I got a message from Jen, and she said, I don't know who you're praying to, but one of my therapists just put in their notice.
No way.
Yes. And she was like, can you be in Texas, the end of next week? And I was like, absolutely. So I fly in, I do my interview, everything goes well. She notes that it's going to take a little bit for my license to transfer from Georgia to Texas.
Right.
And so she asked if I would mind working as a tech. And so I was like, that's not a problem. Help me understand the company a little better. And so she asked the manager at the time to come in and interview me. And so in walks the manager. We meet, we talk for a little bit. Everything goes well. Jen walks out. He walks out and Jen walks back in, and I look at her and I said, Jen, you're going to make me take home a white boy. 7 years later, I'm Mrs. Tolar.
I love that so much. And he is like this redheaded Irish,
redheaded, red beard, blue eyed, just this big hunk of a man.
And y'all are just adorable. I love that story. That's such a great story.
Yes, and he's also been such an inspiration because he too is in recovery. Mm-hmm. He's been in recovery for 12 years now.
Amazing,
and it's just an honor to see what recovery can do in someone's life, and when they decide to stop numbing and face themselves and the beautiful life that they can have. And I'm honored to get to witness that every day.
I think that's really cool that in your relationship, you're seeing that long-term play out. That's a very different emotional connection than, it's gratifying, of course, to see your patients and your clients achieve success, but to have that relationship with somebody, boy, that gives hope to everybody who's dealing with this stuff. And that's really cool. So I want to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about how you counsel people. How, when somebody comes in and they're really struggling, or actually, how do most people come to you? How do they find you, and why? What do they come in asking for or looking for?
A lot of times clients reach out to me. They find me on Psychology Today and different websites that, I'm on, Psychology Today, Therapy for Black Girls, or some of the websites that I'm on. But a lot of my clients find me because they are struggling with addiction. They are struggling with relationship issues. They are struggling to figure out their next move in life. Many of the women, particular that I work with, are going through life transitions, whether it be motherhood, their kids are transitioning out of the home, divorce.
Hello. All of the above.
All of those big life transitions. And I think the pandemic really changed the conversation that we had nationwide around mental health. And so we've seen a big influx in people reaching out and trying to figure out, what can I do? Because what I've been doing, my coping skills aren't working anymore. And
they're seeking out new coping skills. That's really a silver lining, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's been needed for a long time before the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think that's cool that you're seeing that as a result, and that people have that awareness and now the courage and the motivation to actually seek mental health. And that's just, wow. As a doctor, that's really cool to see that happening. We need mental health. Cool. So I know you kind of have a way that you talk with people and kind of take them through the process of, that's kind of your process for helping them deal with addiction. We're all familiar with all kinds of ways that we help people cope with addictions. There's the tried and true Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12-step plans. I'm not advocating one way of treating addiction or another in this program. This is whatever works for you is great. And I think they're all ways of achieving sobriety and getting to the goal that you want to get to. My background as a life coach, there are a lot of life coaches that coach on this topic too, and it's more centered around mindfulness. And I think that's a little bit more about, that's closer to what you teach also. But we got into some good conversations beforehand when we were eating about just how you take people through the process of figuring out how to handle their addictions. Tell us what you do.
So regardless of what stage someone is in whenever they come to me, or regardless of what their issues are when they come, whatever the presenting factor is, I still treat it very similar. I give everyone very similar tools. One of the main things I give my clients is what I call a check-in. So we know that with addiction, a lot of times it is a coping mechanism because of something else that's going on. And a lot of times we're reacting and responding to the story that we're telling ourselves, about the situation, about the environment. Many times we're responding to old past traumas or old life events. This situation makes me feel the same way, or that person looks the same way, or they remind me of this feeling. Those triggers, right?
So it's less about like the getting high thing. Mm-hmm. So we think of drug addicts of always just seeking the high. And certainly I think there is some of that, but I think the bigger picture is that less people are going for the high, but they're rather trying to cope with the thoughts and the life circumstances and trying to get away from that.
Absolutely. One thing that I would always say with my clients, because I'm a slogan type person, if I can get you to remember something.
Wait. We're going to put this on the screen, y'all. Tell me, Brittney.
Drugs and alcohol aren't the problem. They're a solution to a problem much deeper.
Woo. Okay, that's going to have to be on Instagram. That's going to have to be a whole post on it. That's going to be one of our little quotes on Instagram. That's great. Say it one more time.
Drugs and alcohol aren't the problem. They're the solution to a problem much deeper.
Wow, that's profound. I think that's really true. So how do you help your clients get to the deeper problem?
So we look at the deeper problem. So you use the word trigger. I like to use the word activation, right? What gets activated? Okay. So we're trying to find curiosity, just peak curiosity around what's been activated. And so I give my clients a quick little check-in. So how does your body feel? Our body tells us, that's number one. Our body tells us so much about what's going on. Many times our body responds before our mind has even been able to conceptualize what's happening right in front of us.
Yeah.
And so we check in with our body. How does our body feel? My stomach just dropped. My heart's pounding. My hands are sweaty, right?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm so excited. I feel jittery. Just checking with our body to know what's going on.
Okay, let's practice that right now.
Okay.
Let's see. What is my body feeling? I'm feeling relaxed and calm and a little bit excited right now. Maybe a little bit of heaviness in my stomach, but not from an emotional standpoint, probably from the food I ate earlier. How about you? How's your body feeling?
Feel some heaviness in my chest. Feel my voice being a little shaky. My hands are a little clammy.
Okay.
So then we get curious about that, right?
Yeah.
And so the next step is, what emotion is coming up for you?
Number 2. What emotion is coming up for me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to practice number 2. Okay. Satisfied and content and excitement for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the emotions that are here. So there is just a little bit of like energy in my hands, but it's not sweaty, clammy, nerves, because I've been in this chair a minute a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm super excited about the conversation and just the work that we're doing and our ability to reach the audience. And so as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about all of that. Like, this is fantastic for us to be able to sit here and have a conversation and reach the people that need to hear it. And I think I'm a little overwhelmed by that. I'm getting a little teary. I think my body's changing as we're talking. How about you?
So the emotions that are coming up for me is definitely excited. And this isn't necessarily an emotion, but something that I've noticed as I tap into the emotion is I'm trying to stay out of self-judgment.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like remaining curious, the staying out of self-judgment. These are conversations that we've had with other guests on the show for different topics.
Okay.
I think the timing for having you here is really perfect.
Mm.
You know, Nick had talked to me about you coming on the show as an early guest because I didn't have a guest list. And now you're the 26th episode. And, you know, I was talking to Starlee about this as I was getting ready. I said, the timing for you is just amazing because now I have the other guests and the other conversations that have these similar talking points, and you're just coming in and like putting it all together in the context of a really important topic. And so it's fun for me to see how this is unfolding. So that was a little segue. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. So your emotions around this right now are
excitement, nervousness.
Yeah.
And then that idea of like staying out of judgment.
Yeah. Oh, that's where I was going with that. So the staying out of judgment thing and having self-compassion is one of the core fundamental things that we teach in the B category. So y'all who have been watching know the little 7 colors up here are the 7 seeds of the soul. This is our curriculum that we teach. For those of you that are new to the show, I'm going to just tell you real quick. So the first one is B. That means, how are you? How are you choosing to be in this world? How do you take care of yourself? What is your self-care, which is what this is today. B, heal, which is healing the things that are broken. Love, give, grow, pray, and attune. So when we talk about this, having self-compassion and non-judgment, that's one of the ways that we choose to be with ourselves. And so when you say you're having that emotion of nervousness and jittery and stuff, that's your emotion. But then what you're doing with it is choosing non-judgment.
Which kind of leads into step 3, right? Which is getting curious about your thoughts. So ask yourself, what am I thinking? Like, what am I thinking about? What's going on in my mind? What's the story that I'm telling myself? We always have a story. We're always creating a story about ourselves, about the situation, about other people, about how other people see us and what they're thinking, right? Other people's judgment of us.
Right.
And so getting curious about the story. Because when we get curious about the story, then we can do step 4, which is respond authentically. How do we actually mindfully respond, right? So do I react to and respond out of my nerves, right? Do I respond out of reassurance and that self-compassion, right? And so it's really about, how do I want to respond now that I know what my body's doing? Right? Now I know what emotions have shown up for me. I know the story that I'm telling myself, and now I get to respond authentically and mindfully and in a way that feels true to me.
Authentic to you. I love that. So that's the pause in between all of the stuff happening, and then just taking a quick, it can be like a millisecond even, where you just have that ability to connect your higher level brain to your limbic system. We call it the lizard brain, the like reactive brain, when it's just like on autopilot. It's that taking that pause and then making the decision about, how do I want to deal with this moving forward?
Absolutely.
So when we talk about this in terms of addiction, I love the example of just us sitting here talking about us processing through that as we're sitting here. But in the context of addiction, that pause is super important, because that's the place at which you have an ability to choose how you want to act or respond, instead of it just being the automatic, which our brains like. Our brains, they're lazy, right?
They're lazy.
They just want to do what they've always done. They want to drive to the grocery store and then to work, just like it does every day, that autopilot. So let's talk a little bit about dopamine and that response and how that plays into this whole process.
So our bodies naturally make dopamine, right? It's our feel-good chemicals. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, like all those neurotransmitters that get activated, right?
Yep.
And so
just a second, I want to clarify for my audience. So a neurotransmitter, just for those of y'all that are unsure about what that is, we all kind of know it has something to do with depression and joy and all of that. So our neurons or nerve cells in the brain, in between, the way that they communicate from one cell to the other is these little neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, and others that sit in the fluid gap in between them, and they take the message from one neuron to the other. So super important. If you are dopamine depleted, then you have a hard time transmitting the electrical impulses or feeling.
Absolutely.
And one of the major classes of antidepressants that's been around forever is serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? So what that's doing is keeping the serotonin in the gap so it works. It keeps the nerve cells from picking it up and depleting that. So that's just a little bit of science background for you guys. Okay, keep going about what it's doing.
Yeah, well, and on that same, and I'm not going to nerd out too much.
It's kind of fun. We can nerd out.
So fun.
I know.
But in that synapsis of what's happening when someone is using substances, alcohol, heroin, marijuana, once it's metabolized in the body and it's going to the brain, this is where the euphoria and the feel good happens. It mimics the shape of dopamine and serotonin.
Oh.
And it sits on the same receptors.
Okay.
And so, but it feels heavier. It feels more euphoric.
Okay.
And that's the addictive part.
the brain starts to choose it.
Absolutely. It prefers it. It feels better.
And so when it's not there, the brain is like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do anything.
I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to do anything. You need to give me that other stuff, right?
Right.
And we're talking about drugs and alcohol, but we see that in sugar. We see that in shopping. We see it in sex. We see it in so many other addictive behaviors.
Yeah.
And so it's that euphoria. It's the chase of all of that. And so when our body stops making it, and then we move into a place of recovery, and the place of recovery is a place of healing. And I want to bring in everyone in this piece. So this isn't just for people that struggle with alcohol and drug addiction. This is for people who just get burnt out in life. Because what happens in burnout is very similar to what happens in addiction and the overproduction of and then your body just begins to shut down.
It's like none.
And it's I'm not doing anything else. And so with that depletion of dopamine, we search for things. That's what our natural human behavior tells us. I got to search for something to make me feel better.
Feel good.
Mm-hmm. Feel good or feel better.
Or not hurt.
Not hurt. Mm-hmm.
That's really profound. So when we talk about people stopping an addictive behavior and trying to reset that dopamine imbalance, it's like a teeter-totter that's just gone wonkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So physiologically, we know from amazing studies done at Stanford by Dr. Lemke, she's the dopamine nation chick. We know that most addicts within 14 to 28 days of stopping their addictive behavior or substance, their dopamine neurotransmitters will start to make dopamine again and feel better and balance out. And I think a really important point that goes back to the 4 steps that you had is when people are making that choice to do that detox, that they have that pause where the thought that they put into the pause between steps 3 and 4 is, what do I want to do that makes me happy or brings me joy? That's not reaching for the substance.
Right.
Once you start practicing that, then it's not about having to follow 12 rules or white knuckling the letting go of whatever the thing is. It's more like finding the joy in life.
Finding joy, finding contentment, finding a reset.
Yeah. And
I mean, I think that's where the self-care piece comes in, because now you're at a place where now you have to build and create a life that you don't want to escape from.
And that's the whole title of our show. There you go. This is how you build a life that you don't have to escape from. Well, this has been a really great episode. Thank you, Brittney, so much for being on this show and being such an amazing guest. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you found this helpful, please like and share it and tell everybody else to tune in. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. Bye, guys. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Becoming Virtuosa. To learn more, come visit us at drcrockett.com. That's drcrockett with 2 T's.com. Or find us on YouTube for The Dr. Crockett Show. If you found this episode helpful or think it might help someone else, please like, subscribe, and share. This is how we grow together. Thanks, and I'll see you next week. Love always, Sue.